Hi, welcome and congratulations. You've taken a great step towards a healthier body and to find more peace for your mind. This is Ease for Vitality, where we explore 10 habits in 10 weeks. When we have the knowledge, we can make a more conscious choice, which leads to our habits changing and a new way of living. A few things I want to mention about this program. You're not expected to nail these 10 habits in this short time frame. Just start to understand why these habits work for your body, your mind, emotions, and even how it ripples into your relationships and meeting your deeper or higher goals. Some of you will have these habits and others will not. So we're just starting with where we're at. Common sense and knowledge is only valuable if it becomes common practice, which leads us to behavioural science. For example, we know that to lose weight we should eat less calories and move our bodies more. We know this, and yet many people are not doing that. Why is that? We'll be exploring these further as we go through the program. We just want to get these habits in motion or up-leveling them to be more effective. So let's get started.
So before we dig in, I'd like you to take a nice deep breath in and gently close your eyes down. Take your awareness within. And then as you allow your breath to release, allow one word to float up into your mind for how you want to feel at the end of our 10 weeks together. Perhaps you'd like to write this down and share it on our forum later. Week 1 is early lighter dinner. This is a keystone habit. Why? We know that human physiology has millions of years of evolution. Humans are primates. Primates are diurnal, meaning active during the day, not nocturnal. So primates eat during the day. Food smells attract predators, and because we have limited vision at night time, we're meant to be eating during the day. Reflect on how you feel after you have a big, heavy meal. The carpet snake energy where we just want to curl up and sleep for ages or rest anyway. So eating like that at the end of the day can be really taxing on our digestion. So this is the first habit in our 10 weeks because what you do the night before affects your tomorrow. It influences how you feel in your body the next morning, as well as in your mind and your emotions. This is a habit-changing course. So we dig in, as I've shared with you previously, on habit science and how our behavioural science can be simplified. So I'm reading the second slide. By changing our habits, we're changing our biochemistry. We'll get clear on which habits help our body. We'll support each other in this process. We'll focus on our own changes and not try and change others in our lives. We'll focus on ourselves. Reflect on if you're tired or if you're well rested when waking in the morning. Just check in. Where are you really at right now? With habit change, this can happen in 2 ways. So we can do the cold turkey, where we change everything all at once. It's all or nothing. Or there's a technique called the Kaizen technique. So this means small incremental steps. Kaizen is a Japanese word meaning small continuous improvements. And this is much easier. So for an example, a Kaizen step would be a 1-minute practice. Small incremental steps, small continuous improvements. And as you reflect back, you can see how when you just start adding on, expanding and extending, how far you can travel without it being an intense journey on the way. So explore and experiment which way works with these habits overall, or with specific habits in and of themselves. And then you watch for the feedback and try one way. And if it doesn't stick, go the other way, try the other method. The aim is to feel good when we wake up in the morning. We're setting group culture here, not aiming for perfection, just small, incremental, positive changes. Implement the habits 4 to 5 times a week, solid Bs, remember, not straight As. Otherwise, there's the looming failure hanging over us. We will troubleshoot with the habits, and this is identity work with layers of behaviour change. And then try and make super easy yet engaging to incorporate the habits. And this is your lifestyle upgrade. So now a little of my story. With my upbringing, we were a meat and 3 veggie family. Very traditional kind of meals were cooked, and we weren't allowed to leave anything on our plates. They had to be wiped clean, which I think was a part of that generation as well. And still to this day, I hate Brussels sprouts. I was athletic. I had a lot of team sports that I participated in, and that was my out. Once I left home, I got straight into nursing and my training, moving to Brisbane. And of course, shift work then impacts on my ability to control some of those basic daily activities. I then unconsciously carried some of the same meal patterns through into my own family. So I was aware that if there was comfort food in the house, I would justify eating it at some stage. As much as I knew that this was something that I didn't want to do, emotional eating is a trigger for me. It wasn't until my son spelt it out as a teenager will, after I complained yet again about the snacks and the junk food kind of thing, that he said, well, you're the one that buys it. And talk about a slap in the face. It's so true. So I was the one perpetuating the situation. I was and still am the grocery shopper, the meal planner, and the chief cook. So bingo, I felt like this was a huge wake-up call for me. I then felt that I could make changes for my whole family's health rather than thinking it would be a challenge, with the status quo too much. Even though I wanted it to change myself, it was about whether I was inflicting these healthy ways onto my families and my family members. But I do know, of course, that role modelling is super important for our offspring. So that's what I did. I told them I was no longer going to be shopping for those packaged processed foods or baking anything that wasn't going to fall into some kind of healthy realm. And if they wanted it, they would have to buy it themselves. And I think it was because they had got to that stage where they were teenagers with part-time jobs, still school age of course, but where they had a little bit of a disposable income themselves. Not that of course they ever went to the shop and bought it themselves anyway. So with reflection, let's look back at history. In the agricultural times, breakfast, meaning breaking the fast, is when there was labour. We laboured in the fields. Dinner, the main meal of the day, was at midday. So the farmers would come back in, they'd sit, they'd eat, they'd relax in that hotter part of the day. And then in the afternoon, there would be lighter work. And then supper, meaning supplemental, a little more, and that's to get you through until breakfast. With the industrial age, the physical work moved into the factories then. It was still hard labour and there was still lots of energy burnt, and this helped to stimulate hunger. The out of the home work therefore meant that dinner, the meal at lunchtime at midday, became lunch. So they'd pack their lunch and take it with them. And so dinner, the main meal, moved to the night time. Of course, we also had the invention of electricity in this stage, and that means that people were staying up later due to lighting and things like that. Now shifting into the post-information age, physical labour really was stripped right back. Our workouts are basically our physical labour in this kind of age and stage. So we have more passive and sedentary jobs with lots of desk work or sitting with the convenience of, automobiles and the tech age and stuff like that, computers. So nowadays we have this concept that we could do whatever we want and whenever we want. Enjoy convenient food supply, we have reliable power, transport, the technology, and of course the internet, the web. And we can have whatever we want, whenever we want. But how much do we really suffer? A life of ease versus a life of suffering. So let's move back to the leisurely lunch concept, where it's a lovely meal experience, and that the early, lighter dinner shifts back to that under that supper philosophy. Now, I've added this slide in here because with some people with the different lifestyles that they have, were needing a little bit of a hand with seeing things with some clarity. So this is the intensity of the integration. You choose your level. This is the way to find out how deep you want to dive with the habits and the information that's presented throughout the 10 weeks. So generally, our ground zero is where we want to come from, the awakers kind of part. So this is where most of us will be at, and you can aim to integrate the habits with the timing that we talk about. So then, if you're a shift worker, then you can move a little bit to the left where the timing can be a challenge while you're working. So just focus on integrating the habit regardless of the time discussed or suggested. Then on your days off, be open to integrating it with the ground zero idea where you had the habits with the timing. I hope that makes sense. And then we have the Wonderlanders. And this is the people that have the self-awareness perhaps to want to go a little bit deeper with a bit more of the spiritual elements. And sometimes yogis fit in really simply with this, or other people that have got a comprehensive health and awareness about themselves. So this is where the habits can go deeper, and you can explore the habits with the timing and also with the more subtle information that's provided. So you might find that of interest. But you'll all be given the same information. This system just allows you to draw your line depending on how you want your life to look at the moment. Life will continue to change and evolve, so you may at some time have the opportunity to up-level with your intensity of the integration at some stage. And depending on your intensity, and you can see the direction that you're wanting to take the habits as your awareness deepens, and then the habit immersion deepens as well. So kind of aiming for the ground zero, for the eyes open habit with the timing. If you're a shift worker, just focus on integrating the habit at some level, regardless of the timing. With the next slide, you'll see that it's a circle divided into 3, similar to a clock. So this will guide our timing of our habits, most of them anyway. So from a Western science point of view, we know the human body's production of bile is strongest in the middle of the day. From Ayurveda perspective, that's called the Pitta time. So there's an upward energy shift and the water and fire elements are present. Bile is the power of digestion, digestive enzymes that help to break down protein, carbs and fat into energy and also into the building blocks for the body. So why eat earlier and lighter in the evening? We know that the energy of the sun is going down, which clues our physiology into winding down as well. So if we have a larger and heavier meal at dinner at night time, the stomach has decreased digestive powers. So it's like trying to build a fire in the rain. And there's also the limited calorie burning because we're not as physically active in the evening as we're meant to be winding down. We're getting heavy in the body to settle to sleep. And then, of course, if we have a larger meal, there's the lethargy in the morning when we wake. So looking at the Ayurvedic energy clock, the circadian rhythm, it's important for us to get this. So you'll see that between 6 and 10 is Kapha time. The elements of earth and water are present. So the energies is a descending energy, and there's a heavy, dense, sticky kind of cohesiveness to this time of the evening. So if we're trying to get a lot done, we're still revving up. So are we relying on wine or dessert at this time? That's alcohol and sugar. Or chocolate, the theobromines, which is the stimulant in chocolate. Are we relying on these things for energy? So when we align ourselves to the Earth's natural rhythm by allowing our body energy to move downwards as well, that includes tech screens. Our technology and our screens are actually stimulating for the mind. So if we allow ourselves to wind down, we can tap into the cohesiveness of Kapha. And this time of the evening is for bonding and connecting with others. So for the shift workers, aim to eat your largest meal when you're going to be the most active. So not right before you're going to settle to bed, not just because it's breakfast time. Don't have that big meal then and then sleep as much as you can that day. Try and have it a lighter meal before you have your bedtime. So looking at that and looking for lighter meal options, soups, salads and stews. One pot meals are easier to digest as the food is already mixed together, and so part of the digestion has already started. The high water content also helps. And one pot meals are faster to prepare, so it's a win-win really. The other thing to remember is that salads also have a high water content, so they're easier to digest as well. And the lighter can also come in with having a smaller plate. So the volume that is going to be consumed is decreased. Having a smaller plate is shown to decrease how much we actually eat. So once meal is done, once you're finished, the idea is to close the kitchen. So if you eat dessert, you have that immediately following dinner, not an hour or so later in front of the telly. Just have it straight after. And if you happen to be an after dinner snacker, once you finish dinner, brush your teeth and you'll feel so much better. It's really simple ways of helping to cut down on the mindlessness and those habits, kind of trying to keep them in check a little bit and just the awareness of it. So other tips with eating is that you can have a glass of water 20 minutes prior to sitting down. And then when you do come to the table to eat, take some nice deep breaths as you ready yourself. And just to be more conscious then as you come to the act of eating. This habit will impact on your family unit and your relationships. So let's troubleshoot that for a minute. You can choose your meal times. Either if you find that your family members don't want to eat as early as you, that you can change your meal and either have yours earlier and then just sit with them while they have theirs, and perhaps you'd like to have a cup of tea while they're having their meal. Or you can choose to eat different foods so that you have yours as a nice light meal when they're not wanting to come to the party with that. So there's a few ways to kind of look at Kaizen steps with that. And you're taking care of your body's needs while you navigate some of those relationship habits they can really be impacting on your personal health. So remembering that bile is needed to digest fats and proteins. So ideally we eat them when the bile is strong. So that's at lunchtime. So this leaves the evening for veggies. Most of the time aim for soups and salads or those one-pot meals such as casseroles and stews, the high liquid content to aid the digestion. Try and keep it in your mind to work out how easy can it be. So streamlining the processes if you can. Some menu planning, prepping your veggies, so chopping your salad and your veggies early, like at breakfast time, so that when you walk back in the door at 5 o'clock, it's a little bit easier to get that meal on the table by 6. The other thing to remember is patch eating is about eating what's seasonal. So harvesting, having your own garden, that can really ramp up the quality of the food that you're actually consuming, because we know that the soil that food is grown in nowadays is not ideal with the minerals and the other elements that are required for our physical health. So other things to do with the batch tasking is to block your menus. You don't have to write out a new menu plan for every week of the year. Ideally, you kind of have you can have, say, print off 9 of the meal planners that are in the Habits ebook, and that will last you for a couple of months. And you can rotate those around so you don't have to come up with new ideas all the time. Follow the food cycles, so follow what's in season and what's not, as well as kind of the diversity that's available in our environment. And eating from nature. So when things are in abundance, of course, they're cheaper. So if we eat things that are seasonal, then things will be cheaper. So if you're going to print off the meal planner, then focus just on the dinner column. Don't worry about the lunch and breakfast part. Just focus on the dinner column. And as I said, by recycling the meal plans, you'll actually notice that the decision fatigue relief when you keep it really simple. So thinking, how easy can it be? Rather than having to come up with new ideas on what to feed the family, keeping it really simple, providing nourishment, that's all it's about. So after we close the kitchen, we want a little bit of activity, because this helps food to leave the stomach by bedtime so that you have a lighter feeling. And then the next morning you wake up feeling lighter with increased clarity. Digestion is helped by the upright posture, so not lying down straight after you have a meal. For the Wonderlanders, for the yogis, the Thunderbolt pose, where the north-south connection is nicely aligned, can really help your digestion. That's a really renowned pose to help and aid digestion. So the goal for our early light dinner is 6 p.m. So we have a light supper and then a simple physical activity to aid the digestion. Remember the evening stroll back in the day? So something really light, either going for a walk, perhaps a little bit of gardening, perhaps playing games with the kids. Even some people say that they can get some light household chores done. And this is a nice way to also process the day in a physical way. So just trying to flag it here for the shift workers, please just focus on the lighter part of this habit. Don't get caught up in the timing. So as I said, 6 p.m, if you can look at that when you're on your days off. But otherwise, just look at having your lighter meal before you're going to be particularly active for the day. This earlier lighter dinner makes it easier for the next habit. So we're actually rippling through, and you'll notice how the habits stack on each other as we go through the weeks. So we have these perimeters to know if we're on the right track. Our measuring stick. So how you feel in the morning when you wake up. This splinters into 3 segments. So this is about how your body feels, how does your mind, your emotions feel, and what about your spirit? how peaceful, expansive, in love with life, or not so much. These are just ways for you to measure how on track you are with your habits. And this is the one that will continue through. How we wake in the morning creates the kind of day we're going to experience. So if you're waking up feeling foggy, groggy, heavy, pessimistic, look back, reflect back on the evening before and look at your diet intake. Notice what foods you had and the quality of those foods. This earlier, lighter dinner habit is big if you have weight issues or immune system issues. There's a really quick feedback loop for how this habit creates change, and you'll notice increased energy within 24 hours. This can be big, this one. So that's why it's the very first habit that we go with. So let's reflect on this now. How do you feel in the morning? If you're tired, do you need to get more rest? And to get to rest earlier, you probably have to eat earlier. So you'll see how that ripples back. And notice if you've been overeating at night and how that affects how you feel the next morning. You might feel like it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and it might be difficult to notice for a little while, and that's okay, how we're feeling, reflecting, noticing the subtle changes. But we'll keep plugging away and we'll see that we're moving in the right direction. Our habits reflect who we are. So with this slide, I'm just going to read it from James Clear. The key to building lasting habits is focusing on creating a new identity first. Your current behaviours are simply a reflection of your current identity. What you do now is a mirror image of the type of person you believe that you are, either consciously or subconsciously. To change your behaviour for good, you need to start believing new things about yourself. So this is a little reflective practice as well. Do you see yourself as a night owl? The later, heavier meal encourages and supports that. Is it normal to reward yourself with food? Do you notice that your meals are more elaborate? Also, do you work late, which leads to a heavy meal late with the family? And what do you need to start believing about yourself to shift these habits? So coming back to the Kaizen step, focus on one area at a time. So you can choose timing of your meal, you can choose the food that you eat, or the activity that you're going to follow your evening meal with. So just a Kaizen step is a little part of that, not expecting everything to change all at once. So for example, if you're used to eating dinner at 8 o'clock at night, then you might like to bring it forward by 15 minutes and just do that 15-minute increments until you bring the time slowly but surely back towards 6. I'm not saying to do that within a week. I'm just saying maybe for the first week you might want to do your evening meal at 7:45. See how that sits, see how you incorporate that before you perhaps consider bringing it forward a little bit further until 7:30. That's the kind of idea I'm talking about with the Kaizen. With the cold turkey leap, of course, we'd be saying, okay, we're used to eating at 8, now we're going to eat at 6 o'clock and that's it. So with the Kaizen meal steps then, if you are working late all the time and it drives your evening meal later and later into the evening, perhaps consider having dinner at work. Or perhaps a simple step of marinating the food, because marinating will help, it helps with digestion. The other suggestions with the food that you eat may be to shift towards your stews and soups, as we suggested before, or even eating live, from the yogi's point of view, living raw salads kind of concept. Even a fattier chicken noodle soup means decreased amount of digestion required compared to meals with less liquid. So they're all things for you to reflect on how you want to look at this. Some people find that earlier, lighter dinner is a no-brainer because they're already eating around 6:30, and it's already a really light meal. It's usually just a salad, and there's not too much of anything else going on. So perhaps the little bit of after activity is all you would like to have a look at. It's kind of just reflecting on where you're at. Some people will find that this is a no-brainer, this habit, and others may be quite challenged by it. So we're just kind of digging in a little bit with it here. So how can you add some activity after your evening meal then? Would it be for that little walk? Would it be just pottering around the garden, pulling out, aim to pull out 10 weeds or something like that? You can come to my place. So reflecting and reevaluating the schedule and your priorities. Ultimately, we're aiming for meal spacing. That's why we're saying to have your evening meal by 6 o'clock at the latest. Not only because of the digestive system, needing that space, that lighter meal, and the space to have 2 to 3 hours before you actually go to bed. But also we're aiming for about a 12 to 13 hour fast overnight. So the later that evening meal is, even if it means that you think you're going to, well, I eat at 8 so I don't go to bed until 11, it means that you don't necessarily have a fast overnight. So we're ultimately looking at a 13-hour fast overnight. The next slide is called the layers of behaviour change. And you'll see that our identity is right at the centre. Then we have our performance, what we do, and our appearance around it. So this can also be a template to remind us and to help us to be reflective. So our habits make up our persona, and it's all malleable. So we can change our habits, and that way we can change our identity. So what kind of person am I? Do you think only geriatrics, the blue hairs, someone called them, eat at 6 o'clock? Only the oldies eat at 6. That's not what we do in our day and age. That's not cool. So by changing our lifestyle, it changes our identity. So I'll give you an example. With me in nursing, of course, it was, who am I? When I left the profession, it was, who am I? Because I'd never had self-employment before, never had creative license to create the way that I wanted to live my life because it's very laid out for me. So that lifestyle change changed my identity. And even with yoga, my history was with team competitive sports. Now, of course, we know yoga is not competitive and it's a very internal and reflective practice. So through shifting our dinner style and the times that we eat, we need to observe what that brings up for us. And sometimes just being aware is a place to start, and that is just okay. Awareness, having insight is a perfect place to start. Now this worksheet on this slide, the Identity Evolving worksheet, is available in your Better Habits Guide. So the idea is that you can go through these worksheets and kind of help you to reflect and to get your head around what we're doing here. So with our Identity Evolving worksheet, you're deciding, why are we doing this? Who do I want to be next? Who do I want to become? Is there someone you want to emulate, someone that you admire? If there is, incorporate the habits of that person on how we're trying to become more like such and such. So this way, even when you're not sure what they would do, you could kind of think, what do I think they would do if they were in this situation? So how would you think these people that you want to role model would be living their life with these habits? So you've got permission to evolve, to not know exactly who you are becoming, and to step into that with curiosity. Even though others in your circle will not be changing, may not be changing, but probably won't be changing. We are, including me, and I'm in here with you. We're all in this together. Good habits are not decisions, but rather are automatic routines based on prior conscious decisions. You get it? Once a new routine becomes automatic, it becomes a habit. We will create new routines to create new habits in this course. You need to establish a routine for the habit you want to add. You need to be specific and concrete about the routine. You can evolve the habit over time, but to get started, think simple repetition, repetition, repetition. So the habits are micro choices that are made ahead of time, and then we simply just have to embed them, practice them over and over again, time until they become routine. Ask yourself, what is doable for me? What do I want to do? So don't self-sabotage here. Don't choose something that you think is too big or not really important to you. And the other thing is, don't feel like you have to learn all of the habit science stuff right now. It'll be repetitive as we grow. So in your resources as well, there's the habit forming or changing diagram. So let's look at the habit science there. This is a way to do this that you might not have known about in the past. So we have 3 things that kind of help us integrate habits. So we've got a reminder, which is like a cue or a trigger. We've got the routine, which is the new habit. And then we've got the reward, so the benefit that you get. And that can be intrinsic or extrinsic. So for example, with earlier dinner, the trigger might be an alarm to remind you to start your food prep, and then it flows on from there. So staying with our behaviour science, there's a Fogg method, 3 steps to changing behaviour. BJ Fogg is renowned in this field. Designing for behaviour change is systematic, it's not guesswork. BJ Fogg has created a universal method with 3 steps. Step 1 is get specific. So what behaviour do you want? Translate target outcomes and goals into behaviours. And be specific. In step 2, make it easy. How can you make the behaviour easy to do? Simplicity changes behaviour. And then step 3 is trigger the behaviour. What will prompt the behaviour? Some triggers are natural and others must be designed. So no behaviour happens without a trigger. So let's brainstorm this one a little bit. Say your overall goal is to lose 5 kilos. Applying earlier lighter dinner habit to this process, the Fogg method. With step 1, get specific. Let's say you're going to change to a 10-inch plate. So step 2, make it easy, would be to get the smaller plate. Either, go to a thrift shop and get one, and even put your other big plates away. And then step 3 is to use one of the 5 triggers to help you to prompt to use that plate. That's quite a simple one because it's going to be right there for you. You've got it all laid out. So that would be a really easy habit for you to integrate. So say for the earlier lighter dinner and the 5 kilo weight loss, you might want to focus on the activity side of the habit. So step 1, get specific. You might say, go for a 15-minute walk after the evening meal. So for step 2, make it easy Perhaps you have your walking shoes right near the door and you tell the family about the walk, whether they want to join you or not. And then step 3, trigger the behaviour, choosing one of the 5 triggers. So with this one, it can be, I've finished my evening meal, I now go for a walk. So digging in, expanding a little bit more with the 5 triggers. The 5 habit triggers are time, location, emotional state, other people, and immediately preceding action. So as I mentioned with the go for a walk after the evening meal, the trigger is your preceding action. So you've finished your evening meal, you're now going to go for your walk. With your time triggers, this can be, for example, it's bedtime, so we brush our teeth. With your location trigger, it's when we're here, we do this. For emotional triggers, it can be I feel sad, I eat chocolate. And other people as triggers, it's when we meet up, when I meet up with my bestie, we drink bubbles, champagne. So they're all kind of just fun examples, of course, on what our triggers can be for the habits or the behaviours that we then flow into. So as I mentioned, for the Kaizen step for the 5 kilo weight loss, after you finish dinner, your immediately preceding action, you then go for a walk because you've already got it all laid out there. Your shoes are beside the door. Everyone knows what's going to go on. So there's a number of resources for you in the links that you've been provided. Reading the habit section for the earlier, lighter dinner. You can read through the whole thing and fill out any of the worksheets that you feel inspired to do. There's also the recipe book that you might like to check out. There's cheat sheets and recipes there. You go to the forum for support, so let us know who you're wanting to become. Let the support crew be there as you step more into that identity, and that's where we all begin there. You will find that there will be recipes shared at different times. Please share some of your favourites or some new discoveries that you've found really helpful for this habit. Anything that you want to, this is the place to do it. So some other discussion points to reflect on is notice your patterns. Are we winding down in the evening? Is our last meal supplemental? Is it smaller? Is it simpler? Is it lighter? Are we allowing that fast? So kind of just reflecting on the ability to fast overnight. Like I said, aiming for 12, ultimately 13 hours between dinner and breakfast. Do you have cravings or are they false cravings? A lot of the time our hydration is a false craving for hunger, and sometimes this can be quite trying to get through till breakfast. But just exploring our hunger is really important. It allows our digestion to go a little bit deeper. If you're finding the 3 meals a day that we talk about, breakfast, lunch and dinner, is not quite enough to get you through, and you find that getting to that evening meal at 6 o'clock is a little tricky, then if required, just have fruit in the afternoon as a snack. Because of the water content, it's just so much simpler for the digestion. So with our growth work, as I said, read the relevant section and fill out whatever you like that's interesting you. Do the identity evolving worksheets in the Better Habits Guide. You may like to do the time for dinner worksheet that's in there as well as even filling out the obstacles and strategies worksheets, and these are just ways to brainstorm issues before they actually arise. So it can be about identifying if we're going to have other people perhaps blocking us or challenging our commitment to our habit. So whether they're going to be encouraging us to have the whole bottle of wine because that's the identity that we've got into in the morning in our relationship, or are we going to, that we always have ice cream at 9 o'clock at night in front of the telly. We need to discuss and be really open with our significant others and kind of just tell them that we're doing this for our own health and that you would like their support with it. Potentially there can be ways that they can even be inspired by you. So just go with that and see how it flows. Please share with our coaching calls or even on the forum if you're needing some support with any of these things. There are accountability charts and planners that you might be interested in the resources section as well. There is the weekly meal planner that I mentioned, and there's even like a food journal. So even just tracking our food actually creates weight loss. And that's because it becomes more mindful. Knowing that we're going to have to write this down makes us more accountable, and it's a mindful practice that way. So we tend to be less mindless about what we're actually putting in our mouths. So that can be a really simple way of shifting. So just on a quick review then, and here's what we've covered in our first session. Why we want to eat earlier and lighter. Why we want to move towards soups, salads, or the one-pot meals at night time. Why closing the kitchen after dinner is important. Why incorporating pleasant evening activities helps our digestion. How our identity has to shift for our habits to shift. How we can integrate some habit change here with the trigger, habit and reward system. So as I alluded to, there can be intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So the intrinsic is that when we have that earlier, lighter dinner, when we close the kitchen, or when we are doing that evening activity, the next morning we feel alive, we feel clarity of mind, we're ready to jump out of bed, then that's an intrinsic reward because we feel better for what we've done. An extrinsic might be, if I do this habit for the next 4 or 5 days this week, then I get to treat myself to whatever, whether you want to have, a new pair of socks or, something like that. So work through whatever worksheets or cheat sheets that you find of interest, and I really look forward to hearing from you all really soon. I hope you've enjoyed our first session. We're going to rock it. Hang in there. Feel inspired. Keep inspiring others and go hard. Here's to joyful living. Catch you next time. Bye.